tiene la palabra don Álvaro, que es don Álvaro, don Álvaro Alonso, que es el secretario general de la Cámara de Comercio, Industria, Navegación y Servicios.
Commerce, Industry and Navigation of Gijón.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos.
Good evening to you all. Regional Minister for Health of the Government of Principality of Asturias, Councillor for the Treasury of the City Council of Gijón, Vice Rector of the University of Gijón, President of the Bioethics Scientific Committee, authorities, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce of Gijón, welcome to the fairgrounds of Gijón, Asturias, Luis Adaro. On behalf of my president, Mr. Miguel Jarlaño, I would like to, apologize on his behalf because he could not make it. He had a very tight agenda. He's a businessman, and he had other duties to take care of, and that is why he could not make it. But he asked me to apologize on his behalf. I'd like to start by congratulating the person who has made this Congress possible and who has gathered us here to officially open the Congress, the 10th Congress, linked permanently to Gijón and Asturias. Thank you very much, Marcelo Palacios, for your work. Practical instance of the fact that commitment and example are a good way to maintain ideas in the future. 2 years ago, the 9th Congress focused on violence against women, giving echo to the voice of all the society. And today, that is part of all the social agendas. Today, we're going to focus on youth and environmental protection, which is the leitmotif of this 10th Congress. Those are examples of the fact that this is a meeting that is a reference of the concerns of current events, trying to identify solutions jointly. Bioethics, we do not only analyze human behavior linked to health or biological sciences, we also pay attention to ethical commitments which are part of the problem and the future solution. Before, I was referring to social agendas. Well, it is obvious that the youth, one of the priorities of the youth nowadays is the defense of the environment, and that is why, in this sense, they are very active. That does not mean we should not have active policies of awareness raising, targeting those who are going to lead society in the future. The impact of new technologies on behaviors, for example, that is another good example of what I'm saying, and this will be addressed in the days to come. The Chamber of Commerce of Gijón is very much aware of the relevance of education and training to try to increase talent, always generated near the place where decisions are made. And this Congress is one of those benchmarks we should all take into account. We are also aware of the fact that environmental protection should not only be addressed from a strategic standpoint. In our everyday life, commitment with environment should also be a reality. The fairgrounds of Asturias Luis Adaro that hosts us is a showcase of that concern, and the same as many other events we are holding here in Asturias, and very especially the International Fair of Asturias, which is another example of these policies. The Chamber of Commerce of Gijón I represent thinks that the environmental protection has become recently in a priority of the actions of corporate social accountability. And it is so because most of businessmen and women are aware of the fact that thanks to those actions, organizations will improve the environment and also all the society. But it is obvious that there is a long way to go. This Congress will help us make more visible the challenges ahead of us, and always facing the challenges in a global way, always paying attention to the youth. Thank you very much to the organizing committee for having made this Congress possible, and thank you very much to you all for attending the official opening. Thank you very much, Mr. Alvaro. Greetings to the President of the Chamber. The CIBI is celebrating the 20th anniversary, and today we have been lucky to meet representatives of institutions, entities, or people who have participated in our 10 World Congresses, all of them representing 75 countries with a scientific committee that has worked very hard for 20 years. And undoubtedly, these entities have played an important role. It is very difficult to move forward just a mere idea. You need the support of many institutions and the energy and the other drivers. So that is why, with emotion, we would like to thank very much those of you who have helped us move forward and have made possible to make a dream come true, a consolidated true now. Now I'm going to give the floor to Ms. Anya Braña, who is Vice Mayor and Councillor for the Treasury of the City Council of Gijón. Thank you so much. Regional Minister, Vice Rector, General Secretary of the Chamber of Commerce, President of the CIBI, ladies and gentlemen, my first words should also be to welcome you and thanking you for trusting Gijón to hold this Congress. For those of you who come from abroad or from other autonomous communities, it is great to welcome you here, and we hope that you feel this hospitable city. Also, thank you very much to Mr. Marcelo for celebrating this 10th Congress here, which is the result of many years of hard work. The importance of bioethics in current society has been translated into the work done by many experts, reaching the objective of that society to try to reach minimum ethical values in a world in which principles seem to have been reduced to just means to reach actions. It is essential to respect the environment. The topic of this Congress, Youth and Environment, is also reflect one of the most important issues of our society, not only because of climate change, of course, which is not anymore a radical posture, but rather because of the wish of urging the youth to be involved in our work in the future. The youth should share the responsibility to lead the world, and we should take into account their opinions. We're talking about the generation that is very much well prepared, but they're also going to face inequality with regard to the previous generation. We should try to invert these dynamics, and that is part of what the public powers have to do in the future, and that is how we have to face these challenges. Also, education has to be improved, the fabric has to be improved, etc., etc. Youth policies should start to be cross-border to cover all the governmental actions, surpassing the category of issues of second category. If our youngsters are involved, that is a guarantee for our future. For the City Council, it's an honor and a pleasure to host such events, And we are really happy to promote these events, because by doing that, we are promoting our image and also giving voice to other sectors of the society. Again, thank you very much for being here, and we wish you a very fruitful Congress. Thank you. Sorry, but I did not have the paper, and she was reading really fast.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. In the last 20 years, the CIBI has celebrated 20 annual cycles of conferences.
Algunos con un avanzado conocimiento.
Many experts participated, some of them with expertise, starting their studies or their research work, and others with a lot of experience in their research. But our main aim is to share knowledge, clean knowledge. These conferences have been done at our headquarters, but also at Asturian hospitals, at the headquarters of the universities, or also at public or private schools here in our region in Asturias, not only in Gijón. And for some years, after having accumulated 16 experiences or 17 years of experience, we also had an itinerant exhibition to show different ways of thinking worldwide. Our actions have been observed and highly valued by those who wished to come and visit our exhibition. Now we'll give the floor to Mr. José Ramón Obeso Suárez, who is Vice Rector for Research of the University of Oviedo. Whenever you want, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Regional Minister for Health of the Municipality of Asturias, Councillor for Treasury of the excellent Municipality of Gijón, Vice Secretary of the Chamber of Commerce of Gijón, President of the CIBI, authorities, speakers, attendees, friends, colleagues. I am here to talk to you on behalf of the rector. He apologizes for not being here, and he also wants to convey greetings of congratulations and welcoming. As Vice Rector of Research of the University of Oviedo, it's an honor to participate at this official opening of the 10th World Congress on Bioethics, with the main topic being youth and environmental protection. It is a great satisfaction for the University of Oviedo, obviously also for Gijón and Asturias, to host this event, and that is why I would like to express that we are proud of hosting such an important group of experts here in Gijón. I'd like to greet warmly this great number of experts and specialists who will talk to us in the following days. I would also like to express my gratitude to all the participants who are here with us today for sharing this time with us, and also for responding to the stimulus of this Congress. This edition, 2018, it has already been mentioned, is aiming at promoting international and national studies focused on environmental preservation. It is also targeting especially the youth that in some decades will be leading the decision-making process to preserve the planet and its resources. There are many people who are involved in the elaboration of the agenda of this Congress. I'd like to congratulate the organizers, as well as all of you who are going to participate in the Congress in the following days. Also, greetings to the youngsters and those of you who are participating for first time in these kind of events. They are the leaders and the protagonists because there are some sessions devoted to secondary school education. I'd like to also congratulate the organizing committee and the scientific committee chaired by Marcelo Palacios. Thank you very much, and congratulations to you all, to all the people who have worked hard to prepare and draft this agenda. The University of Oviedo is an institution that is already 400 years old, but aware of our duty and possibilities as a driver of the Asturian society, we have moved forward along the times and the changes. A key role is played by cross-border actions related to transparency, entrepreneurship, international projection, and environmental sustainability. In this sense, there are many challenges and uncertainties ahead of us. Among them, let me highlight those that I think are the largest challenges of the 21st century. First, environmental change and its impacts. Then the feeding of 9,000 million inhabitants who will inhabit the planet, the half of the century. We need to provide innovative technological solutions, efficient and respectful towards the environment, green, friendly, but we also have to be ethical because global solutions will only be maintained if there is equity between the peoples. Therefore, we need to find a solution to many of the problems that will be tackled in the following 3 days. I have no doubt that this will be a great Congress with excellent speakers and fruitful debates, and bridges will be laid down for future considerations. We also hope that the youngsters are also moved so that they also get involved in the future. Before finishing, let me again express my gratitude to the organizers of the Congress, to all, the protagonists, and also the youngsters. To finish, I encourage you to enjoy the Congress, attracting also the future young generations and hoping that you have laid the basis of future editions. Those of you who come from other autonomous communities or from abroad, hope you enjoy Gijón and you spend some time getting to know our region. And finally, I wish you a fruitful Bioethics Congress. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vice Rector. The CIBI has also organized some awards with the regional government of Asturias, so for 10 years, with the sponsorship of the government of Asturias. We have been receiving works, and we have given some awards, always based on the criteria established by the CIBI. Depending on the themes proposed throughout 10 years, people from many countries, South America, European countries, and Spanish regional autonomies have presented their works, and that is also a reason of satisfaction for us. The CIBI has reached agreements with prestigious entities, with the Ateneos Jovellanos de Gijón, Ateneo Obrero de Gijón, or the Principality of Asturias, or the Academy of our language, of our Asturian language. They are goodwill agreements, they are non-profit agreements, and on the basis of them, we try to do a bit more so that our society is also integrated in our work, exchanging our knowledge. Now, I'm going to give the floor to the Regional Minister for Health of the Principality of Asturias, Mr. Francisco del Busto del Prado. who will officially open this Congress. You have the floor. Marcelo, Ana, Vice Secretary of the Chamber of Commerce, Marcelo, colleague, friend for some years. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening, rather, to you all, and welcome on behalf of the President, Mr. Javier Fernandez. I am here on his behalf because his agenda was too tight, he could not make it, and thank you very much for having invited us to officially open the 10th International Congress on Bioethics. We have no doubt it will be very fruitful just by having a look at the excellence of the speakers and the presentations. And I am sure that from Gijón we will be sending a clear message regarding the world serious, severe problem we are facing as a chosen species. As the author Ochoa mentioned in his book, we have to try to continue celebrating these congresses because the message resulting from it all will give right to the reason and the society, and that is a key element for action. And I hope it also reaches the citizenship that is more linked to this challenge, the youngsters and the future generations, because they will take the lead in the future and have to lay the basis for future development, social and environmental economic development in the benefit of all the humanity. That is what we need to get at. It is a topic with many geopolitical, social, economic, business, strategic implications. All these will be addressed here at this Congress. Let me just share with you some considerations in this regard. Some general considerations, but I think that they may have to do with the solution of deeper problems, because health, public health and policies are aspects that are intertwined and closely linked to our topic. The first of those considerations have to do with urgency, and this red code should, a long time ago, be taken care of. If my data are correct, the first conference of United Nations on the human environment was held in Stockholm more than 45 years ago, and it ended with a declaration. In the principle number 19, it was said, and I quote, "It is essential to work on education linked to environmental issues, targeting youngsters as well as adult generations, and always taking care of the sector of the population least privileged, to try to lay the basis of a well-trained public opinion and a better behavior of individuals, societies, and groups and organizations, always assuming the responsibility regarding protection and improvement of the environment." It is also essential that the media, the mass media, avoid to contribute to the deterioration of the environment, and on the contrary, should disseminate other kind of content, more educational content, aiming at improving the environment so that the human being can develop himself in all its aspects. I do not know what your opinion is, but I think that there are many pending issues. And therefore, I think we should not just neglect our responsibility and leave these actions for future generations. If we want things to get changed, we need to focus part of our efforts at these aims with education, information, and training on the basis of a society of free human beings, free citizens, aware of their interests, because they are the best tool for the environmental progress. And without that progress, there is no social progress. And what about health? Where does it fit in? Well, I think it fits in. I will tell you a story told by Héctor Abad Azernitan, son of Héctor Abad Gomez, Colombian doctor, retired professor, activist, and killed in Medellin, and author of a great novel based on the biography of his father. Here he tells how some people committed to social activism can change the life conditions of many other people. For my dad, and I quote, the physician had to do research, understand relationships between economic situation and health, and stop being just a witch to become a social activist and a scientist. In the thesis, denounced the magician physicians. He got angry with those who only wanted to apply treatments to the typhoid fever instead of preventing it by means of hygienic measures. He did not trust the new injections. And the same inner revolt he felt against those who tried to cure some children instead of going into the nitty-gritty of the diseases. Many of those diseases were the result of social diseases that also happened in the Europe of the 19th century, when dysentery, typhoid, and cholera struck the main cities in Europe due to an inappropriate garbage collection. And this happened for a long time until they started to separate the different garbage. In our world, these environmental issues are quite overcome, but now we're facing new concerning environmental issues that have to do with the quality of work environments, the air we breathe, the huge amount of chemical compounds we are facing every day, the quantity and the quality of products we use, the services we hire, the food we intake. The government of the Principality of Asturias is very much concerned about the environmental protection, the protection of our coastline, the quality of waters, pollution, sustainable production, mass consumption, and recycling. We want to protect the Asturias that we want to give as a legacy to future generations. In the Health Department, we are drafting a new plan in health and environment, with the main aim being to protect the health of the citizens in the framework of a sustainable development, identifying the environmental conditions and the potential risks to health. The plan aims to set up a multi-professional group, an intersectorial group of experts or task force to evaluate the situation of the environment, to propose new actions to protect the health of the citizens, and to inform the citizens regarding environmental risks and the potential diseases. Adapt the registers and the health information systems so that they can relate environmental risks with other risks, and also to provide geocoding, promotion of research studies, new methodologies in terms of health, and new tools to be used in health in all the policies, to draft a risk map regarding the most polluting industries in Asturias, to do a follow-up of emissions and emissions of those industries related to the surrounding populations. It is an ambitious task that will contribute to maintaining a commitment with environment and health, always looking at the present generations and the future generations in the line of the group led by Hector Abad. The other important point of the health in the future has to do with education. If we want a real change of paradigm, we need to educate and we need to train, because training and education is the key tool to change our relationship with the planet. We cannot act anymore on the basis of thinking that whatever is surrounding us is there for us, without taking into account the most basic nature laws. interterritorial solidarity, intergenerational solidarity, and social equity. And I'm not just referring to formal education, which also should be there, but we need to get to know the surrounding world. And through that knowledge, we need to get to love nature, discover the laws of nature through study, but also through observation and experimentation. The youngsters currently have lost that direct contact with nature, which is a shame. And that contact is essential to take into account what is surrounding us and how that is related to health, development, and advancement of people as individual subjects and as social subjects. We need to recover that contact. We need to promote the willingness to get to know more and more. We need to promote this at schools and universities to guarantee progress. I would not like to take longer because there are other people who want to address you and they know much more than myself. Thank you very much for your attention. We wish you a fruitful Congress, and we really hope to have your conclusions very soon. Officially open, the 10th World Congress on Bioethics has been officially opened. Thank you very much. Before moving on, I think we should recall one of our most valuable activities, what we call the jewel of the CB, and that is the pedagogical program or agenda. We say many times that CB would have a reason of being just because of this pedagogical program done through private and public centers with the help of the professors and teachers. And so far, more than 800 kids or teenagers have participated in our program. Next year, we're going to launch a new award so that they write about the Convention of Human Beings and Medicine in Europe, which is also called the Convention of Asturias on Bioethics, because the signature of that convention happened here in Asturias, in Oviedo. Our aim is that secondary students start to get to know the important and relevant contents of such an important document, a document that was born here in Asturias. So that's why we are going to launch a new award related to this convention or document. And now we'll give the floor to Miss Anna Multsichuk. Anna.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm very glad to be here in Gijón, and it's an honor to deliver a speech now. Before making this speech today, I had two simultaneous exhibitions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Probably some of you have seen some parts of it. It was really very enjoyable because there were people from different ages. There were children, there were adults, boys and girls. And I have to admit that the level of players was quite good. I didn't expect that people in Astoria play chess so well, so thanks all for coming and for having such an enjoyable event. We are now on the 10th Congress of Bioethics, and since one of the themes is about children and education, I would like to talk about chess in my life and how chess can be used as, as an educational tool. As for me, I have started to play chess very early. I began to play chess at the age of 2. This happened thanks to the fact that I was born in the chess family. Both of my parents, they are chess players themselves, so they taught me the rules very early. And already by the age of 3, I could play a proper game, which is quite unique because usually children play chess later. For the beginning, I would like to tell you shortly the story, how it happened, because I think the way I started to play is also quite interesting, and the way I was taught to play chess, and I remember this story. I remember the times when I was like really very young, 2-3 years, and my father was taking me to the park. And the paths in the parks, they were made of tiles. And my father suddenly had an idea that these tiles, they reminded him about the chessboard. And somehow he started like saying, okay, let's play a game so that you start to jump or to go over the tiles like the chess pieces move. And it was like a very good combination because it was both combined the chess trainings and also the physical activity, which is very important for the person. Later on, I continued with chess, and as you may have realized, I have been in chess for nearly my entire life. So I have reached quite high results. I have been 3 times women's world champion, and also 3 times I have won European women's championship. But even if it didn't happen, I still find it very good that I knew the rules of chess and that my parents taught me the game. Because chess means a lot for me, and it also taught many good things. For example, chess teaches you to take the responsibility, to have a better time management, it develops your memory, it develops you to be more concentrated, and really many good things. It teaches also that to respect the other people, other countries, and that only with hard work the high results can be reached. Chess is also a fair game because in the end of the game you always have the fair result and you can't blame anyone about that. Besides of that, there are also 2 very important things I would like to share with you because there were 2 important researches in my case. In my opinion, first is about children. There were some tests which proved that children who go in for chess, who have some chess lessons, have better grades in school in compared to the children who don't know anything about the game. Therefore, after becoming the world champion and approaching the mayor of our city, I managed to make that chess became one of the subjects in almost all the schools in my city. I live in Lviv, so it was more than 100 schools. We have it already for 2 years, this program, and I find it being very nice, and I wish it to continue. And the second research is about the adults. It was also proved that people who play chess more seriously, that chess protects them from Alzheimer's disease. There is no case that a chess player has such kind of diseases. So this is really, I find it important, and I really wish that more people play chess. At the moment, as a summary, we have that more than 100,000 people playing chess all over the world know about the game. And I wish that this number increases, especially as I find it being very useful for children. I wish that even here in Spain, chess is one of the subjects in school. I think it could be a good idea also to make it in Spain. And also just more people, if they just know about the game, it will help them not only to improve their chess level, but it also improves during different life situations. Yeah. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thanks a lot. Now,
Conferencia inaugural de
we're
este
going to have
congreso.
the official opening speech or presentation by Ms. Erin Williams, main analyst of health policy in Mitre, USA, and Mark Thomas from the Center for Health Transformation. He is the CEO for Health and General Welfare of the Population. We'll now give the floor to both of them for their formal presentation. Thank you very much.
Is there... okay. Is there questions on? Okay. Buenas tardes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. This is what I was looking for. It is such an honor to be here delivering the inaugural address for the 10th meeting of the International Bioethics Society. The last thing I want to do is take extra time and keep you from wine and celebration, but I would be remiss if I did not... Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. But I would be remiss if I did not take a moment to say thank you to the scientific committee, my fellow committee members who have made being a member such a rich experience over the last 2 decades. And in particular to thank Dr. Palacios, who launched CB and has lovingly nurtured it over the years. So thank you very much. It's even a more special honor for me today because today is my birthday. So it's a great day. And thinking about our presentation about big data and how we can use it to protect children and combine it with the environment, I was struck watching Anna play the amazing spectacle of watching her play 25 simultaneous chess matches. How she, with her extraordinary mind and presumably years of dedication, was able to take all of her knowledge of chess and figure out what to do in each case to come out with the best outcome with each move in each game was just extraordinary. And it occurs to me there's something very similar that we're looking to do with big data in order to apply it for child welfare, to take a massive amount of information and use that to empower better decisions for the purpose of protecting the environment and children today and in the future. So, quick disclaimer, both Mark and I are presenting on our own behalf and don't speak for MITRE and don't speak for the US government. I would be remiss if I also didn't take a moment to share with you a quote from Dr. Potter, who is actually responsible in a way for me meeting Dr. Palacios and being here today. He really foresaw the foundation of this conference, noting in global bioethics that it was a system of morality based on biological knowledge and human values. And he also focused very much on responsibility for preserving the natural environment. So throughout the course of the presentation, I want to start a little bit with just a little bit of information about the organization that Mark and I work with. It's an unusual place. I want to give you a little bit of background about big data and analytics that can form the foundation of empowering better decisions. We'll talk a little bit about, and Mark will take over, talking about advanced analytics in vulnerable children, something that he has personally championed inside MITRE and across the government. And then to talk about an approach that incorporates, and the importance of incorporating climate change data. And we want to actually launch with a call to you, to each of you, to partner with us in order to do something better for the whole. So we'll get to that at the end. So a little bit about MITRE. MITRE is a nonprofit organization. We work primarily with the federal government. We operate a very special kind of entity that the federal government creates in the United States called federally funded research and development centers. And these are really meant to partner with the government to perform close to inherently governmental functions, to handle big data, to operate in a conflict-free environment. So for example, we don't sell technology, we don't have a dog in the fight when we're talking about solutions. MITRE itself is fairly large. It's a $1.5 billion federal asset, and it is part of this ecosystem of research centers that work across the government. We have, as a part of our obligation as a research center operator, we have sort of a specific obligation to look ahead, to look around the corner and invest in innovation. So, for example, we have invested in cybersecurity for medical devices to help make the whole medical ecosystem more secure. We've invested in ethics and artificial intelligence, looking at ways to ensure that there's equality and there are, across the use of AI. And we've invested in child welfare and big data. So how can data-centric partnerships solve big problems? Those of you who heard me speak at the last conference may remember that I talked a little bit about aviation, and I'm going to do that again today as a refresher to paint a picture of where we can go with data. I think aviation is a good example. Many of you probably arrived on airplanes and understand that arriving safely without a crash is very important. So what MITRE has done in cooperation with the Federal Aviation Administration in the United States is taken data from the regulator, the FAA, and proprietary data that industry like United Airlines and American Airlines and Federal Express and many other commercial air carriers are willing to share with us because they know that we're not competitive. Pilots are willing to share incident reports, kind of like doctors filling out incident reports in the hospital. Air traffic controllers are willing to share their visions. And the idea is that with all this data, we have been able to move the industry from a classic crash autopsy system where after there's a plane crash, everyone comes together and they investigate and figure out what happened so it doesn't happen again. And that's very important. But to get to the next place where we move to prediction and prevention using advanced analytics so that everybody knows where to apply the resources for best effect so that the airplane crash is prevented in the first place. It's been quite successful. You can see since ASIAS launched, this is the public-private partnership that we operate, The blue line, which well, it's under the flags, but it represents the commercial accident rate has continued to decline, while the red line, which is the number of flights, has continued to increase. So the skies are safer because of what we're doing, and because all of these different competitors with different interests were willing to share their data with a trusted third party for the betterment of all. And what we found in building this public-private partnership is that there are 3 fundamental building blocks that are required in order to make it work. First of all, you need trust. You need to have a place that can do the analysis, that can take the data, that people can rely on, both to protect their information and also to guide what happens. Each entity that contributes data has a role in governance and saying how it's protected and what can be done with it. And we are fortunate enough to be in that trusted position to perform that function. You also need value to get people to come. So almost everyone will come to the table for the mission. If we say, we're going to make the skies safer, everyone will say, hooray, and they'll show up and they'll give it a try. If we say, we're going to help make children safer, we're going to prevent child death, people will be motivated by that and they'll come. But they won't stay. They will stay if you give them something back of value. It has to be valuable to them, to the contributors. And in this model, we've been able to accomplish that by giving each contributor of data back a dashboard. So now United Airlines can see, for example, not just how many missed approaches there were at my local airport near Washington, D.C., but they can see benchmarked whether that's higher than the industry standard or lower based on aggregated data from everyone else. And that helps them make decisions about safety. It helps them guide us about research we should do into potential incidents, and it helps us collectively keep the skies safer. And the third thing you need in order to enable all this is really excellent analytics. You need an entity that can take data of different types and make sure you're comparing apples to apples and not apples to tractors. You need an entity that can really understand how to take that information and make it actionable in a given situation. And that's the role we've been trusted to play. And now I'd like to invite my colleague, Mark Thomas, up to talk about lessons learned in translating this into child welfare.
Thank you. Muy buenas noches. Gracias por la oportunidad.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here.
As Aaron has talked about the success that we've experienced in making aviation safer by bringing together different partners and different types of data, I want to talk to you about how we can do that same thing to improve the safety and well-being of children around the world. So child abuse is very dangerous. Child abuse and neglect kill more children than cancer does each year in the United States. And we know that it has lifelong intergenerational consequences. On the left of the screen here, you can see actually the current issue of the American Journal of Public Health, where they present compelling data on the lifelong consequences of child abuse and neglect. So it's not only impacting the child who's abused, but their children and their grandchildren. And on the right is a picture of a report that was issued by the Commission to Eliminate Child Abuse and Neglect Fatalities. Because of the problem of child fatalities due to abuse and neglect, the United States Congress established this commission to look at the problem and make recommendations back to government on how we could reduce this tragedy. And we had the privilege to work with this commission and talk to them about the work we did in aviation safety and how the barriers that were overcome in aviation safety could be a model for how to make improvements in the safety of children. So this report made recommendations back to Congress that they build on the work that was done in aviation safety as a model for improving child welfare, to bring together different stakeholders with different data in a way that they can get more information out of their data together than they would by only looking at their data individually. So the problem of child abuse and neglect and violence towards children is an epidemic. Over 1 billion children around the world each year are victims of violence. We know that this violence results in health problems for the children later in life. And in a survey that was done in 2014 of 133 countries, 1/4 of adults surveyed indicated that they had been subject to abuse as children. And up to 20% of those interviewed who are women had been victims of sexual abuse. And in the United States, we know that almost 750,000 children die each year to abuse, or victims of abuse and neglect, and that 1,750 of those children will die from their injuries. So this is a significant problem that really requires many parties to come together to look for new solutions to this problem. And the people who are working on addressing abuse and neglect face similar challenges to the ones that were faced by those in the aviation industry when they first tried to tackle safety issues in a collaborative manner. Just as an airplane crash is a complex event with multiple factors contributing to it, we know that when a child dies, it also is a multi-dimensional problem with multiple factors contributing to it. And so we know that there are some initiatives around the country in the United States where they're starting to use advanced analytics to look at their child welfare data, but they're only looking at their own data. They don't know if they are doing better or worse than their neighboring states or other parts of the country. So there are some early successes, but we can't generalize or apply the principles and findings from one area to another without sharing data. And much of the data currently available to child welfare workers and leaders is not easily accessible, and sometimes the data is of poor quality. And those who are working with children and their families, social workers, child protective service workers, often lack timely access to that data or lack tools to help them make empirically validated assessments and choices. So historically, and in many cases, the current practice in at least the United States and other places in the world is when a child, when a child is abused or neglected, the focus is on the child, him or herself. And sometimes there's also a focus on the family around that child, and in some cases even the child's community. But the problem here is that we're relying on one human brain to take in data that's very complex and make decisions and choices. And often we know that that results in error. It results in children being abused and neglected even further because a single person can't understand all of the things that are going on in that child's environment. But if we're able to leverage advanced analytics and tackle bringing together data the way that they've done in aviation safety, we can then empower people with computational power and advanced analytics to understand all of this data and know where the risk in the system resides and where to focus their attention and scarce resources. And so this allows those who work with vulnerable children to look at each layer of the child's ecology and know where that risk lies. We've done some work with this type of data with the County of San Diego in California in the United States. We've taken data from different systems and put it together in a way that was able to generate new insights that they weren't able to arrive at previously. And because of these big data techniques, we were able to learn that the person who reports child abuse to a child welfare agency matters. And historically, the county treated every report as equal. But because of the analytics and the findings that emerged from those tools, they were able to identify areas of risk that they didn't know about before. And we've also worked with the federal government in the United States to advise them on the use of predictive analytics and provide guidance to states and counties as they're beginning to apply them in the area of child welfare. And while this is great progress, there's more that can be done here. Instead of only looking at data in the child welfare system or in the healthcare system, we propose that it's important to incorporate climate and environmental health data as well, because we know that vulnerable children are disproportionately impacted by climate change and environmental degradation. And so if we really want to understand which children are at greatest risks and where we should intervene and focus scarce resources, we really need to understand environmental and climate data that also influence this child. And so I've talked about predictive analytics, and just as sort of a primer, that term can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But when we're applying it here in this context within child welfare, there are 4 categories of analytics. One, which is descriptive analytics, tries to tell us what happened in the life of a child. So it's backwards looking, historical looking. And then there's the category of diagnostic analytics, trying to understand why did it happen and what can be done to identify those risk factors that were not previously identified. But if we're going to prevent child abuse and neglect, we need to be able to look into the future and understand what will happen. And that's where these tools can help us understand and learn from these different sources of data and identify where needs in the lives of vulnerable children are likely to occur. And then also to move into the area of prescriptive analytics that can help us know what we should do once that risk has been identified. And so child welfare agencies are trying to respond to problems using these tools before the problem escalates, before the child is harmed or killed. And currently within the United States, there are 4 areas where these analytic tools are currently focused. One is trying to identify elevated risk, identifying those children most likely to experience harm or risk, and then also to try and identify events that are likely to reoccur, a child that is likely to be abused again, or to go back into foster care, which is a system in the United States where children who are abused are removed from their home and provided care. And it's also being used to look at system issues. Are there things happening to the children where they might be at risk of becoming abusers themselves as they become older? Or are there problems that happen later in the life of the child that were previously undetected? And it's also being used to help organizations understand how they are functioning, how effective are they in having an impact in the lives of these children. What can be done to help overburden caseworkers make better use of their time and be more precise in their focus? On this slide, you'll see something that came from the New York Times Magazine, where they profiled Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the United States, where they are using algorithms and big data to know when children are in danger. And they are having mixed experiences as they do this. They've had some very positive experiences, such as the ones that are described here, and then some questions that are emerging. So some think that the use of analytics is the most powerful tool that's been available to protect children in the last 20 years. Others wonder if these tools might overrepresent vulnerable populations and target people inappropriately just because they are impoverished or receiving some sort of support from the system. Others feel that it helps them improve the quality and focus their services and their interventions on the right families, as opposed to treating all families to be at equal risk. And others wonder, how are these algorithms and analytics working? How can we see whether they're really focused on the children at greatest risk? And so this has led to a pretty robust discussion. And there's a photo of a book here on the left, The Weapons of Mass Destruction, that talk about how there are risks if these analytics and algorithms aren't used appropriately. So we need to understand that the results of algorithms have consequences if they're used to guide decision making. And if the algorithm has errors or the data has data quality issues, it can negatively inform the result and create harm where it was intended to create greater safety. And in many places, the models and algorithms that are being used lack transparency and have not been validated by an independent third party. And this could lead to risk going undetected. And there's a really important opportunity here for ethicists to become involved and contribute. There's reason to be optimistic about the power of these tools, but not if they're applied without transparency and thoughtful discussion about when and where they should be applied and what should happen as these results from the big data models are produced. So bioethicists can be very helpful to helping to guide that discussion and examine areas of risk and help develop mitigation and mediation strategies. So another successful model where advanced analytics are being used to identify children at risk is a methodology called risk terrain modeling. And it's been used to successfully identify communities and neighborhoods and even streets where children are at greater risk of child abuse and neglect. So this approach relies on community data, information about crime and sales of alcohol and other things about a community to help leaders identify areas of their community where children are at greater risk. And so this is a great success that this team has been able to achieve, but we propose that there's an even greater opportunity for impact when we include climate and environmental data into the analytics as well. Because we know that children who are at risk will suffer disproportionately when there are weather events or catastrophes related to climate change. And so we really need an ecosystemic view of the child that incorporates not the things that are just happening in their families, in their communities, and in their schools, but also in their environment. So we know that when children are vulnerable already, that weather events and climate change can make them even more vulnerable. An example of this occurred in the United States after a large hurricane, Hurricane Katrina. In the state of Louisiana, which is a state within the United States, they had over 2,000 children in foster care. These were children who were already abused or neglected and had to be removed from their home and were in the custody of the state government. But when the hurricane arrived, those children had to flee the affected area just like everyone else. And as a result, during the hurricane, over 25% of the children went unaccounted for. And after a whole month after the hurricane, there were still over 150 children that the state had no idea of their whereabouts. And so these are already vulnerable children who are separated from their families, and their situation was made worse when the hurricane struck. And we know that events like hurricanes have greater intensity with the climate change that is happening and are likely to happen more frequently. And so these children ran out of needed medications. They ran out of housing or clothing and weren't able to access medical care. They weren't able to have health insurance, which in the United States is critical to be able to be seen by a physician or a psychologist. And so these children were traumatized even further because of weather events and climate change. And after this storm, the number of children in foster care in the state of Louisiana actually increased because of the trauma that they and their families experienced. Whoops. And we know that this is true in Africa as well, where drought and flooding has caused great trauma to children, has resulted in children skipping or dropping out of school, being forced into early marriage, or having to leave school to gather wood or food to sell to sustain themselves or their family. So these are already vulnerable children whose vulnerability was increased because of floods and droughts. And UNICEF has identified climate change as one of the most fundamental threats facing the world's children and future generations. And they've identified that catastrophes like flood and drought increase causes of mortality for children. They increase the likelihood that they're exposed to diseases like diarrhea, malaria, and pneumonia. So we know that it's really important that as we think about how to help children, that we think about how these weather events and climate change will impact their lives. We'll skip over this slide in the interest of time and ask Aaron to come up.
So, leading up to our call to action, on my birthday, on the beginning of the 10th CV conference, where I'm going to ask each of you who can be empowered to come and join with us and help make the planet better and safer for children. I want to pause with a quote from Oren Lyons, chief of the Onondaga Nation, one of the Native American nations in North America. It captures an idea that is present in many of the Native American nations about the seventh generation. We are looking ahead, as is one of the first mandates given to us as chiefs, to make sure every decision that we make relates to the welfare and well-being of the seventh generation to come. What about the seventh generation? Where are you taking them, and what will they have? So this is an idea of planning, not just for today, but for our direct descendants, our children's 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 children, who we will never meet, but to whom we owe a debt of a livable world and a better place. And I'd like to add to that a quote from Wangari Maathai, environmental and political activist and Nobel laureate, who said, "You cannot protect the environment unless you empower the people. You inform them and you help them understand that the resources are their own, that they must protect, that we, that you, that I must protect." And I think these two ideas together form a really powerful, virtuous cycle of empowering the people so that they understand the environment is theirs to protect for future generations who benefit from the environment and are then empowered further. And with that in mind, I'd like to turn it back to my colleague Mark Thomas to present a call to you to launch something together.
So in this slide, you see our vision for the future and how we can work together to bring together data that will help us know how to better protect children and ensure that they have a healthy and a happy childhood that isn't negatively impacted by environmental, community, family, or other risks that they face. The problem is that the data belongs to many different organizations. And when the data resides in those organizations, progress is very hard to achieve. But when people bring the data together, an international group of stakeholders that are concerned about child welfare, that have access to data about the children and about their communities and the environments that they live in, when they come forward to share data together that leverages predictive risk modeling and advanced analytics, we can take data to help inform decision-making, to focus scarce resources, to intervene before children are abused and neglected, before their lives are made more vulnerable by climate or weather events, to help reduce the likelihood that they experience abuse and neglect. So we know that this is possible. We've seen it happen in aviation safety, where different aviation industry stakeholders have come together and brought their data into a single place so that they could learn more and make the air travel safer. We've seen it happen in patient safety as well, where this same model has been used to help inpatient care in hospitals become safer. And we believe that the same is true in being able to improve the welfare and health of children around the world. So we would encourage you to partner with us, to think about the organizations that you're a part of and the communities that you're a part of, and think about ways in which you can help bring that data together in partnership with us to better protect the lives of children. And as we end, we'd like to try and play a short video for you, if that's okay.
Sentimos, pero a la cabina de traducción no llega el audio del vídeo directamente, estamos escuchando el sonido de sala y con esa calidad no se puede traducir. Lo sentimos.
Bien,
pues aquí están las direcciones de correo electrónico y estaremos deseando recibir sus correos electrónicos para comenzar a colaborar. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, hemos escuchado una magnífica intervención
has been a great presentation by
y Marc
Mark and Erin representing Mitre. Great presentation, thank you so much. And I think it is a very good beginning for our 10th Congress. Thank you very much to you all for being with us. And now we have some wine, Spanish wine, waiting for us out there. We hope you enjoy it, although it is a little bit late. But thank you very much for being with us so late, but I think it is high time we started to enjoy some cider and wine. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.